The president is in the United Kingdom right now. He just came off of blistering NATO for 2 days and getting them to try to commit to do what they promised. And with me to talk about both topics is the one and only Nigel Farage, the former leader of UKIP and perhaps future leader of UKIP. He's also got a show on the LBC radio network and a great friend of Breitbart News. Nigel, good morning, sir. Welcome back to Breitbart News Daily with Alex.
Good morning, Alex. And boy, things are happening here in Europe with your president here.
They sure are. And I want to get, first of all, just a report of what's happening from you. But then also I want to get your analysis on all of this stuff, because I'm seeing even those on the right in America, it's a total mixed bag. We had our own Oliver Lane, our editor of Breitbart London, on the show. And he's loving what the president is doing, kind of talking about Brexit and talking about Theresa May. And others, even on the right in America, think that President Trump is essentially undermining an ally. I want to get your thoughts on all that. But first of all, give me what's happening today in the UK with the president.
So what is happening is this interview with the Rupert Murdoch-owned Sun newspaper went online at 11 p.m. last night, UK time. And of course, it has hit the establishment like a bombshell. I mean, here is the president saying that basically voters are not getting the Brexit that they voted for. And there's a direct reference to the deal the Prime Minister got her cabinet to agree to a week ago, whereby we would stay with the European Union in full regulatory alignment. Namely, we would not be taking back control of our laws, which of course was the whole object in many ways of voting for Brexit. And this, of course, impacts on America. An important part of Trump's foreign policy has been that he wanted to execute a free trade deal with the United Kingdom. And this mattered enormously to the president because he wanted to show the world he's not against free trade. He just wants it to be fair. He wants it to be reciprocal. And effectively, what Theresa May has done by signing us up to continuing EU rules is to torpedo the prospect of that deal. So this does have a direct impact on the USA, and for that reason, I think he's justified in saying what he said. More surprising, I think, and perhaps what has shocked people even more, is, he's effectively endorsed Boris Johnson as the next Prime Minister. He said, Boris is a guy I can do business with. Now, Boris, of course, was a Brexiteer, still is a Brexiteer. Theresa May was a Remainer, and is now a very uncertain Prime Minister. But certainly, there is a huge swirl of debate going on. Right now, as we speak, the two of them are ensconced inside Chequers, which is the Prime Minister's country house outside of London, and we're anticipating a press conference in about an hour and 20 minutes' time. I think it'll be fascinating to observe the body language at that conference, and I think things may be pretty awkward. So that's happening up there. In London, what we've had this morning is the balloon of Donald Trump as a baby flying in Parliament Square, something that Sadiq Khan's people authorized and something that I cannot imagine any other Western world country would have allowed on the day of a US president's visit. And we have a Stop Trump march going on through London, with tens of thousands of people out saying he shouldn't be allowed into our country. So, Alex, whichever way you cut it, it's a pretty dramatic Friday the 13th.
Yeah, it is a dramatic Friday the 13th, and there's some highlights I'm already seeing that are breaking from the president's visit and the outrage and the hysteria. That it is somewhat heartening, Nigel, even though it's very dark, that I'm seeing the hysteria on the other side of the pond that we're used to here from the American left, where everything is the end of the world. But I'm seeing the exact same thing play out today in the UK. But I have to ask about this blimp. Sadiq Khan fancies himself a thought leader. He fancies himself a intellectual. The fact that he allowed this to happen is the single most immature thing. And by the way, Donald Trump is our president. So we have witnessed immature things in American politics recently. This is the most immature thing I've seen in modern politics, that he's allowed for this to happen. And I just want to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think the whole thing is a disgrace. I think it's childish. I think it's puerile. I can scarcely believe that he's allowed this to happen. And isn't it extraordinary that 2 days ago, a man called Sir Christopher Meyer, okay, he was the British ambassador in Washington for many years. He is somebody who is a big feature on UK media discussing Anglo-American relations. And at 2:45 in the afternoon, 2 days ago, on Victoria Station, one of our main train stations in London, he was attacked by two youths, beaten, blooded. He's been in hospital under a general anaesthetic, so serious are his injuries. And I would say this, that with incidents like that, with the murder rate in London now having overtaken that of New York, it might be better if Sadiq Khan stopped engaging in this war against Donald Trump and got on with being London mayor and dealing with a crisis in crime.
Well, but I think that's the issue. I think he's a terrible London mayor, and the president today apparently said that he's doing a terrible job on terrorism and crime. We've been tracking at Breitbart London the rash of knife attacks that have been taking place, and London has just become sort of, at least if Breitbart coverage is accurate, and I, of course, believe that it is, it makes London a lot less of a desirable place to go, Nigel.
Well, I think that's right, and I could add to that, Alex, acid attacks and all sorts of appalling things that have been going on. Now, I know that you can't blame the mayor entirely for what is happening. These are changes that are happening in society. Much of what is going on is gang, drug-related crime. But that, as London mayor, should be his priority. And whatever his personal views on President Trump, he should at least respect the office of President of the USA, because like it or not, when it comes to defense, when it comes to security, when it comes to information sharing, when it comes to investment, when it comes to business, this relationship between the UK and the US matters a lot for both of us, and I would argue for the safety and security of the Western world.
And one thing that you did yesterday, which is very smart, I believe, is you said that you congratulated the president on calling out NATO, calling them to honor their commitments. But you pointed out that the EU is actually a bigger threat to the world order. I happen to agree with you. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, NATO is a cooperative club where sovereign nations work together in a system of mutual defense. It's fallen a little bit behind the times. I think it should be working a bit more together on terror, perhaps than conventional defense. But hey, the point being, there are 29 members of NATO. The rules of the club are, whether you're a big player or a small player in terms of your country's population, everybody contributes a minimum 2% of their gross domestic product to be a member of that club. Effectively, what it means is that a lot of smaller countries put money in to be protected by America, with Britain as their major, strongest ally. And at the moment, only 5 countries out of 29 are paying the 2%. America, of course, pays a lot more than 2%. And what Trump has said, and by the way, Obama twice made speeches about the iniquity of this. What Trump has said is that, you can't go on freeloading off the American taxpayer. And I think he's absolutely right to have said it. He certainly got them worried. The summit ended slightly strangely in Brussels, with Trump making a speech saying, everybody's agreed that we're going to pay up. Isn't it great? I'm not absolutely convinced that is as nailed on as it seemed. But, the message, the threat has been put there. If you want to continue to have American security against any threats, you better start paying your bills.
Yeah, I think so, too. And I think the president probably exaggerating a touch, but I think it's probably an effective tactic, because then if people don't accelerate their timetable to start paying their full commitment, then the president will have that to lord over them, which he does pretty effectively.
Yes.
Let's play a clip.
And he can go back.
Nigel.
He can go back and say, look, you've reneged on what you said to me. No, absolutely.
Precisely. Let's play a clip of the president yesterday in Brussels talking about Brexit. I want to get Nigel's thoughts on this. 1C, Mr. Paul, if you would be so kind. 1C.
Well, Brexit is, I've been reading a lot about Brexit over the last couple of days, and it seems to be turning a little bit differently, where they're getting at least partially involved back with the European Union. I have no message. It's not for me to say. I own a lot of property there. I'm going to Scotland while I wait for the meeting. I have Turnberry in Scotland, which is a magical place, one of my favorite places. I'm going there for 2 days while I wait for the Monday meeting. But it's not for me to say what they should be doing in the UK. I have great friendships. My mother was born in Scotland. I have great friendships over there. We have a wonderful ambassador, Woody Johnson. And he's doing it. By the way, Woody's doing a great job. But it's not for me to say. I'd like to see him be able to work it out so it could go quickly, whatever they work out.
Nigel, so he kind of is reluctant to comment on it, but still people thought that he was talking too much trash about Theresa May, and perhaps this is throwing an ally under the bus, and even people on the American right were calling the president out for doing that. But that's not my view. My view is Theresa May has been totally ineffectual, and I want to get your thought. Does she have any ability to rule credibly at this point?
Look, part of this debate back in 2016, in the US presidential election, was Hillary Clinton believed in the European Union, wanted it to expand, even wanted America to join a hemispheric common market, and I quote her. The globalists see the European Union as being at the epicenter of what they want for their new world order. Trump fought against that. Trump opposed that. And so for Trump not to speak about Brexit, which he absolutely believes in, as do many other senior members of his administration. I mean, frankly, I would have been surprised if he hadn't spoken about it. Now, his criticisms of Theresa May have not been direct, they've been indirect, but I think everybody gets the inference of what he's saying. And I have to tell you that Middle England, people who don't normally speak, people who rarely shout, people, small c conservatives, have been bombarding newspapers and websites with absolute condemnation of Mrs. May's Chequers deal, or sellout, as I would prefer to call it. People here are feeling betrayed. We voted for something with Brexit. We're not getting it with this Prime Minister. President Trump has expressed that view. The American administration believe in Brexit, and he's not been frightened to say so.
What have been the biggest weaknesses of Theresa May's tenure as Prime Minister so far?
Well, the weakest feature is that she's the wrong person. I mean, the point is that she was a Remain voter who became the Prime Minister by a weird set of circumstances. She doesn't believe in Brexit. And to push through a fundamental constitutional change, you have to have will, belief, confidence, and vision. And I'm sad to say that all of those qualities are missing. My own view is if she stays on as Prime Minister, we will definitely not get the Brexit we deserve. So I hope she's gone as quickly as possible.
So do you think, though, if she is removed or if she steps down or if she becomes an untenable situation where she can no longer govern, which it seems like we're nearly at that point, does this mean that the Labour Party is going to rise, that you're going to see an even further leftward swing as you've seen in London? Could potentially the entire nation go that way? And could we see a Jeremy Corbyn type?
Well, that's a risk. And many people see that as a risk and feel that as a risk. But, Brexit was about something bigger than whether we have for 5 years a left-wing leader. Brexit was about whether we, for the next centuries to come, are to be an independent, sovereign, democratic nation that stands up on its own 2 feet, makes its own laws, controls its own borders, and does its own bilateral deals around the world. Brexit is more fundamental than whether Mrs. May or Mr. Corbyn is sitting in Downing Street.
Nigel Farage, again, is with me. Last topic for today, Nigel. This is a 30,000-foot question here because we're looking at President Trump saying it's very sad this morning that the mass migration that has taken place in the UK, where it's losing its culture. I think it's just I couldn't have scripted a better comment for the president to make. And this is a crucial debate we're having in the United States. You were the original to bring this up, which is that part of the problem with having the Schengen rules, having the EU take the sovereignty of of the United Kingdom was this hemispheric open borders issue, which does end up eliminating what can be unique and beautiful cultures. And you would think it's multicultural. It's actually monocultural is the goal that the left has at this point. You were the first one really on the world stage to acknowledge this. Are you heartened by the fact that it now seems that countries all across Europe are kind of joining you? I mean, Italy comes to mind quickest. Yeah, so just talk about it, because we haven't spoken since really this huge resurgence.
I think, I don't think I was the first person to see this problem. I think I was the first person to voice this problem. And I took a lot of abuse, Alex, for doing so, I can assure you. But this is now a mainstream debate. Immigration, culture, identity of countries, and making sure that people have a sensible immigration policy where people that come bring benefit, assimilate, and become part of the community. This is now the number one issue in all of European politics, and President Trump recognizes that and understands that. I'm afraid, again, it's an issue on which Theresa May is incredibly weak. She served 6 years as our Home Secretary in charge of immigration, and she oversaw unparalleled numbers coming into the United Kingdom. So it is yet another criticism that in many ways is aimed at Mrs. May.
Nigel Farage, always great to talk to you. He's a LBC radio host, former UKIP leader, a writer for Breitbart from time to time, and I think probably the most articulate speaker in the English language, which is high praise. And I know Nigel likes when I say that, so I will echo that. Nigel, it's great to talk to you. Let's do this more often.
Thank you. Thanks ever so much. Nice to speak to you. Bye-bye.